Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my January tarot journal with me. Today we'll be taking a look at the journal, the Traveler's Notebook that I have set up for my tarot journal for 2020, and we'll also be doing a little bit of journaling along the way. So I do have some things set up in this journal, and I do have some things that we'll be doing together today. So I had mentioned in my video in December where I was setting up the inserts for this journal and talking about some of the things that I wanted to do moving forward, that I had a journal cover on order, and this is the cover. It did arrive at the end of December, and it is a Chic Sparrow Traveler's Notebook cover. This one is the Mr. Darcy in Buttered Rum, and I believe it is the B5 size. So it is a nice, very sturdy journal. It's got some nice pockets on the inside, and then in the back here it has a little, I think they call these a secretary pocket. And of course it has a pen loop, and it has the beautiful stitching and the Chic Sparrow embossed on the back. So it's a beautiful traveler's notebook. I'm very excited to be working with it this year. So I thought before we really dive into the journal with me, since this is our first one for the year, I thought we'd just kind of take a look at the journal itself and what I've got in here so far. So one of the things that I've just tucked here in the back, this is my depth year journal. That we'll be covering in a different video, so I'm just going to set that aside for right now, but it does kind of just hang out in there so that it doesn't get lost among all my other journaling stuff. So what I have done for this particular traveler's notebook is I am using inserts to keep my tarot journaling organized. And that was one of the things that I had discussed in my video in December, where I talked about some of the things that I wanted to do moving forward. So in December, we had made on camera my January insert, and here it is. And I did actually have to modify it once I actually got the notebook because it was too large. I made it too big. So I had to cut it down. I had to restitch it. And I did end up taking out some pages because I miscounted my pages as well. Like me and math, we just don't get along. I made the size wrong. I miscounted the pages. I had way too many in here, and it made the insert really big and bulky, which was one of the things that I was trying to avoid with this particular system. So I did end up trimming this down, and I haven't rounded the corners yet. And in truth, I don't think I'm going to, just because that's a whole extra step. And I mean, it does look lovely. You can see I rounded the corners on this journal, but as I intend for this journal to be switched out monthly, and I'm going to be making new inserts monthly, multiple inserts, I really don't want to have to take the time to crop the corners on all the pages every month. So I just decided to kind of let that go, and it's just going to have square corners, and you know, it's no big deal. It totally works as well. So every month I'm going to make a new insert for my tarot readings for that month, and then we'll make another journal probably later on this month that I'm going to house them in so that I can keep them all together in one place. But some of the things that I want to track in terms of my tarot journaling is stuff that I want to keep in my journal year round. And I don't want to have to keep rewriting it. And that's one of the things that can sometimes get a bit tedious about using a bullet journal, which is another system that we'll be talking about on this channel as well, because I do actually use a bullet journal in addition to this. But when it comes time to swap out journals, there's some information that you want to retain. So you have to basically decide whether you're going to like rewrite it all, pare it down, maybe cut it out and paste it into your new journal. And that can just get a bit tiresome after a while. So what I did was I made an insert, and this I kind of call my dashboard insert. So this is just a very small insert. It has very few pages in it. And it just covers the basic things that I want to keep in here year round. So this little insert can just live in here all year round, and then I'll switch out my monthly one. Now, the thing I don't have in here at the moment, and I have not gotten around to making at the time I'm filming this video, is my tarot challenge insert, which will sit here in the back. And that's just another insert. Maybe we'll do another video on that one, but I haven't done it at this point. But I wanted to get this part covered first, because if I don't do this in sections, it's probably going to be a really long video, because I have quite a few things that I want to cover in this particular one as we're getting started in the new year. So let's take a quick look at my dashboard insert here. So I made this little cover page for it, and this was a page that I had pulled out of a book. So it's a book page. You can see the writing on the back. And then I just made a line here to give it this overlay look. I wrote 2020 on, there's just a black piece of paper. The next page is a black piece of paper and it sits behind it. And I just kind of picked a point, made a line, and cut around it. In the crafting world, they call this fussy cutting because we're cutting around these little fussy, you know, embellishments here. So I fussy cut this little section out so that we would get this nice little layered effect. And I just think it's a really cool effect. I do that some in my bullet journal as well, which is kind of where I got the idea for it. So then we have what I do intend to be my intention page. I don't know if it'll show up on paper, but I do have a line here that indicates where this layout happens so that I don't write over this. And one of the things we're going to do today is actually fix this because I do not like the way this came out. I think it's really hard to read. It's just the letters were too long or too tall, too skinny, and I don't like the way it looks. So I thought I was going to fix it before I filmed this video, but I thought let's just fix it on camera because one of the things that I want to do with my tarot journal with me videos is to actually show you some of the processes and things that I do because I get a lot of questions about how I go about doing things in my tarot journal. So I thought this is a good one that we could cover today. It's kind of like how to fix a mistake. So let's just start off 2020. I've already made a mistake on the very first page of my journal, and I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna go about fixing that. So that's one thing we'll be doing here in just a minute. So next I have another page that I made, and this is my books that I wanna read. Now this is specifically for tarot, because anything else that doesn't apply to my tarot practice is in my bullet journal. So everything in here is specific to my tarot practice. So these are tarot books that I want to read. And I made a mini book, and this was really, I mean, you could simply just make a list too, just list out the books that you want to read. But I was playing and just having a little bit of fun with it. So I made a mini book. So I just printed out, I went and found online just a flat image of a book. You get the two covers in the spine. And then I just printed that out on my color printer. I sized it down because it was a little bit big. Sized it down to fit on my page and then cut it down. And then what I did was I just cut some pages to that size. So this is a page from Alice in Wonderland. You'll see that I incorporate those pages into my books a lot. It's not in particular so much that I have like a huge affinity for the Alice in Wonderland stories. It's more that just when I did that junk journal, I pulled out like 800 some odd pages from this book. And I like to reuse the things that I already have as much as I can. So a lot of times I just try to find, you know, pages that have words or whatever that kind of catch my attention or that I think would look nice aesthetically. So it's more in this sense about the aesthetic than it is about the content of the pages. And it's just because I want to reuse what I've already taken apart versus, you know, taking apart other things. So we see you get a nice little image with the flower here, and that's really what I liked. I liked that it had the garden. I like that we have the flowers. And then here's just my first page. It's just like my little title page, and it's a list of the books that I want to read in 2020. These are specifically tarot books. As I read these, I will, you know, of course, add to the list, and there's plenty of room to do that. For this one, I just folded it in half, and this one I just staple bound. So it's nothing fancy. I just used 2 staples in the binding and bound it together like that. Made a pocket and tucked it in here, just like this, so I can take it out and I can, you know, update it and look at it. I probably could do something a little bit more fancy with this book title. I might add some gold to it because I think maybe that would be pretty, to fill it in with the gold accents. Maybe we'll do that later. Actually, for right now, I'm going to take this out because anything that's super bulky when we're working in the journal can cause, when you're trying to write, can cause some little bit of wonky lines because you're actually going to hit this. So because I know we're going to work on this page, I don't want to, you can see here, I would hit this line if I kept this little book in here. So we're just going to take this one out for right now, and we'll put it back when we're done. Next I just decorated the back of this page. This is again another fussy cut from that same page, and I just threw a piece of washi tape over it to make it look like it's holding it in there. And then here I have just some very minimal decorative touches because the rest of these pages are primarily for list keeping. so I don't really need anything too fancy. So here I have just basically my decks to study. I have the Tabula Mundi listed and the Mysteries of Mary. I will add to that as we go, but I was just trying to get it started with the first two that I could think of off the top of my head. And then we have the decks to work with. Again, this was another piece from that same page that I just fussy cut out and glued in here, and threw a piece of washi down this side just to kind of balance it out. And so I just need to kind of transfer that list into here. I just haven't done that yet because I wanted to get this video done. And then here we have my deck wish list. I am doing a depth year for 2020, so I need a place to catalog the decks that I might want to look deeper at, and then might want to make a decision about whether I might want to purchase those decks. I'm not doing a strictly no deck buy year for 2020. I'm just doing a very intentional deck buy. So the goal is to put things on this list and to let them sit there for a while, to give me time to look at them, to really think about them and consider how they might work into my practice. And that's something we'll talk about in more in depth in another video. And then I put a little pocket insert. I like to have these middle pockets. This is pretty substantial cardstock. It's scrapbook paper, so it's quite thick and heavy, and I like to put these as middle inserts because this is where your band sits, is in the middle of your insert. So I like to have, when I can, something a little bit thicker to kind of hold that in and be able to hold up to the wear and tear of that band being rubbed up against it, you know, multiple times. And as this is an insert that's going to stay in the journal, I wanted to make sure that it was very that it would hold up. So I just made a couple pocket inserts. I really don't even have anything in them yet. I'm not sure what I'll put in them. They're just there in case I need to tuck something to save for later. So I have a pocket here and I have a pocket here, and I just, again, this girl came out of one of those book pages, so I fussy cut her out and pasted her on and then put a pocket in front of her. Now the back here of these, so these are the other side of my list pages, and this is where I'm going to put my my year ahead spread. So these few pages here are dedicated to that spread so that I can keep that in my book to always refer to it. And then this is just the back side of those other two pages, the kind of cover and the intention page, and those just sit there. And then we move into my January insert, which you saw me make on camera. So I have this one in a video from December. So if you want to see how I actually put that together, I did end up, like I said, cutting it down because it was too large to begin with, because I didn't actually have this cover when I made it. And so I was just looking at measurements, and apparently I looked at the wrong measurements. But anyway, so for right now, I thought what we would do is just go ahead and do some kind of tarot journaling with me process video. I wanted to just take a minute and kind of show you what I've got set up so far. Like I said, this back band here will be for my tarot challenges, and you can see that it's not full. This journal would hold a whole lot more, so that does give me room to expand. I've heard that these particular covers have the ability to really expand, so I'm excited that I can put more in there as we go along. So I'm going to stop babbling and let's get on to the actual journal with me. Okay, so I've taken the first insert out because I think that these will be a little bit easier for me to show you when I remove them from the covers, so that we can kind of work through them together. So in this first book, what we're going to do is we're going to fix the first mistake of 2020, because, you know, first page, it's best just to get those mistakes right out of the way, out of the gate, right? So I wrote this on here originally. I do not like the way that it looks. So I just tore off a piece of craft paper and I'm going to glue that over the top. And here is my line that indicates where this cutoff is. So I want to make sure that I keep to this side of the line. And that might be a little bit big, so we're going to tear it down a little bit more. And in fact, that has a bit of a straighter line to it. Almost. Ooh, almost tore it too small. So we're just going to glue this down and we're going to write a new label over it. So nothing too fancy to start us off with, but I do just wanted to show you that, you know, mistakes mistakes happen, for one, and two, it's not the end of the world when they do. It's almost always something that can be fixed. Now, sometimes I leave my mistakes in my journals and I don't worry about it. It just, you know, they're in there and they're a reminder not to try to strive for perfection, because that's kind of something I struggle with. But sometimes when they're mistakes like this, I mean, that's a title. That's a title for this page. So it's not something I'd really want to leave in there. It's just something that I want to go ahead and cover up and fix. Some mistakes it's fine to leave, and some mistakes I want to actually fix them up. So I've got that over there. So now I still need to write my intention title. So we're just going to kind of tear this down, maybe. And I was concerned about leaving the white, and I was thinking about maybe distressing it, but I think that because I have the white here, I think it actually helps tie it in together. So I think that's going to look nice. So now we just need to get a marker and write the word intention. And I think we'll just do it in cursive this time. Sometimes when I try to get too fancy, it just backfires on me. So I'm just using an 05 micron pen, and I'm just going to write the word intention in cursive. And that is all that I'm going to do there. Sometimes less is more. So we're just going to glue this one on. I'm using Fabri-Tac glue just because it holds up really well to all kinds of different media, because I tend to use a variety of things in my journals. You could use pretty much any glue. Also just plain old like stick glue works great too. I have one of those that I use from time to time. So there we have our intention written in there, and I have just fixed my mistake, and I think I like that better. It's just simpler, it's easier to read, and that's really all I need for right now. And I just need to go and write my intention for the year for my tarot journaling, or my tarot practice, which is really just going to be to dive deeper into my practice. So to get deep, to go beyond those surface readings. So I'll come back and I'll write that in later on. So moving on to starting into the January insert. So one of the first things that I think we need to do, or I need to do, is to actually add a title to these covers. Because at some point I'm going to have 12 of them in a notebook together. And I want to make sure that I know which is which. So I'm thinking that maybe we'll just pull off, I just pulled a section of craft paper off. I have a whole roll of this. So I tend to just kind of peel off sections of it as I go. And I'm thinking that I might just make a little, we'll just glue it down in the middle of the page and then tear around it. I always have to be careful because Fabri-Tac and nail polish do not get along. Fabri-Tac will take your nail polish right off. Not that I'm like super crazy about my nails, obviously, because they look terrible most of the time, but so now I want to just kind of tear around this. So that's not too bad. Not too bad. So I think we'll put that right there. And I think we'll just, again, nothing fancy. We're just going to write January on here. And maybe we'll kind of thicken the letters up a little bit. Okay. And even though it's going to be in a journal that says 2020, we'll go ahead and put 2020 on there. So now I'm using an 01, which is just a little bit thinner. Add 2 dots on either side. Glue my hand as usual. Okay. There. So now we've got a title on it just so that we know that this is our January insert. We have the just a short monthly calendar because I don't need a big one. I wasn't actually using that bigger calendar that I had in last year's journal. So I just made a quick reference one. And it's just real simple, shows me the weeks and the days, and that's really all I need. I have my moon phases here, did a little bit of collaging behind it. And then of course I just drew in this little plant here to kind of take up this blank area, just kind of finish the page off a little bit. I wanted to include a decks list, and I wanted something that was going to be expandable, and I kind of ran out of room on this page. So basically what I did is I just covered up one side of the text over here, and I added a place to make lists. If I need to expand on that, I can just simply tear out another one of these and paste it here and keep my list going. I don't think I'm going to need to because I'm planning on working with a few less decks per month, but just more intentionally for each one. Now let's go ahead and put in my first reading for the year, which is going to be my January forecast. So for this spread, I drew 3 cards from the World Spirit Tarot for Embrace, Energy, and Release. And I also pulled 2 cards from the Earthbound Oracle to kind of act as a bridge between those 3 cards. I just created a little tag for the cards that I drew, wrote in my reflections for the reading, and of course all this was done on a scrap piece of paper prior to actually putting this into my journal. So you could do this at any time and add it in later whenever you had time to actually do your journaling. And then I just add a date tag at the bottom. And that gives us my first reading into my January insert for my 2020 tarot journal. So there you have it. That is a little journal with me for the first part of setting up my January insert and getting things ready for the new year. I hope you enjoyed this tarot journal with me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.